if you start to demand gold uh, as a payment for oil, you could reach up to a situation where these Western countries will basically be cut out of business. They will cut out of the market because the price of that you pay for a barrel of oil would be so low that it would be below the cost of production that Canada and the U.S. have to sustain. So they would sell oil at a loss.
Yeah, this was actually a policy in the 90s in Canada where some gas stations removed all of the smaller gas stations from the market by doing that tactic. They were selling their oil at a loss so that the other ones couldn't survive. And then we put in a law that you can't sell anything at a loss.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I completely got the entire video because it was pretty complicated. I might need to rewatch it a few times. But if everything goes, in Putin's plans, I guess what he would like to do is basically take out every competitors on the Western side, and at that point, kind of the whole war would be dependent on the Eastern suppliers of oil.
Yeah, well, I think by the time that happens, we're going to be renewables.
Well, I mean, I guess, and I actually wrote that today. I wrote this morning. I was writing that that's kind of scary because I kind of get the point of NATO and U.S. don't want to commit to a war for Ukraine or for the people of Ukraine, but would they be on the same side or the same idea if the
Thing is, you've got to remember that Ukraine is just a pawn between
yeah
Putin and America. Nobody actually, I don't believe anyone actually cares about Ukraine, and I think that's really cruel. We just,
yeah
all they are is a buffer to stop them getting to Europe. Because as soon as one step goes into a NATO country, then America's going full force and blah 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 blah. And I
I
think it's
mean
really
I
unfair what's happened
was
to them. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, but even this morning, I had the TV turned on and the news were talking about Biden. He just arrived into Poland, and I guess he made some statements, maybe to the press. Don't even remember. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But he was talking about these allegedly chemical weapons used by Russians, and he said if they're gonna use chemical weapons, we are gonna respond. So it looks like the whole conflict could escalate pretty quickly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and for the first time, Biden even mentioned it, nuclear. So don't know how you could play out.
Yeah, I get the impression people are just waiting to see what Putin's going to do, and they're trying to assess his state of mind basically. Because you think about it, a couple of weeks ago when he turned around and said nuclear war is off the table, everyone was going, well, this is just a madman who's basically he wants to commit suicide, but instead of killing himself, he wants to kill the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
That and he's just a cruel and callous man that's got a chip on his shoulder. He's thrown his toys out the pram. There's no reason for him to be doing this. You know what I mean?
No. No. I mean, I don't think so.
The world should be combining and raising the standard of living for everybody, but
But
it's
you
not.
know, you know what? Especially and now I'm probably gonna put out a very far stretch hypothesis, but what if I'm just saying what if for the sake of saying it, right? It's just a normal conversation. It's like being four friends at a bar table. We're just talking randomly. But what if this whole Ukrainian situation, this whole war, actually, it's just some sort of a smoke and mirrors play in order to cover what is really up to, like
Well,
rewriting the new world order.
well, that's exactly what it is. Of course it is. Of course that's what it is. This is the big boys playing with everyone else's lives, and it's just I get a bit sick of it. But it's kind of that's what appears to be playing out. I mean,
It's kind of sick to think about it because in the meantime, even if he, regardless if he's going to be successful at it or not, but in the meantime, people are dying. So it's still, gross and it's crude reality. But That's
course
what's
it is.
going on.
But and look who's benefiting from all of this. I'll tell you what, it's not a pleasant sight. It's the press, the media, that are actually
Yeah,
benefiting from all this because they're. I mean,
yeah.
what is happening is utterly horrendous. They're bombing hospitals. They're bombing places that have got children written on the side, so you know there's children in there. They're purposely. I mean, Putin is committing genocide, and the West is letting him. It's as simple as that. You know what I mean?
I
They're
mean,
facilitating effectively. I think it's a
the,
bit, it's
yeah,
painful. Right?
the problem is, yeah, I guess you're right. We are kind of
We're
giving him
standing
a
by him. We're letting him do it. We're
exactly.
letting,
We're giving
we're
him a
letting,
go to do
yeah.
that for economical
And,
reason, essentially.
and America did this at the end of World War II as well. They created Israel and gave Palestine to Israel, and that's been going on ever since and been causing all sorts of problems. And they're just about to do the same with Ukraine. Luckily, we have Zelensky, who seems to be an incredible force, and actually, they're making a mockery of Putin. But if Putin decides he wants to escalate with chemical warfare, then it's you don't know what's happening there. He was going to try and get in there with traditional weapons, but he clearly can't.
Yeah, but
Because,
even even there, of course I kind of take joy, quote unquote joy, in seeing these old narrative about these bold Ukrainian kind of put up a fight, putting up a very strong resistance, and kind of rejecting the Russian invaders. But at a point, I start to think, I mean, if you look at the real forces at play, would you think if the Russians really wanted to get in, like they did in Syria, for example, they wouldn't have hesitated to burn to the ground every single city.
well, this is what they're trying to do. I don't think they can get in. I think Putin's just frustrated because
No, but
he's.
Yeah,
I think he is useless. I think he's completely overestimated his own capabilities. I think he's
yeah, that's for sure.
overestimated his own strategy. I think there's a lot of ego going around, and I think
Yeah,
he's being proved to be wrong. So he's lying to his own people, telling him that he's winning the war. He clearly isn't. He sent two ships got sent back in by Ukraine the other day, two Russian warships. They
yeah,
were running away because they couldn't cope with the barrage that was coming at them.
yeah,
And this
one. I
is
guess one have been
he's out
synced.
of
I
his
guess.
league. He's out of his league, and he's throwing his toys out the pram, and that's very dangerous because he will. When you start resorting to chemical warfare and stuff like that, that's kind of nasty. I mean, we don't really know too much about chemical warfare. I don't know too much about it. The only time I know it is it was used in World War One. They
Yeah,
used chlorine, mustard gas, and that backfired on Germany because the wind changed direction and it wiped them out. So when you start playing with things that have been untested, you're going to unknown territory. And when you go into unknown territory, no one's in charge at that point.
yeah. I mean, I'm just worried about the escalation, the possible escalation, because you started one thing. It's like if you ever watched one of these old gangster movies, it's like you know they send one of ours in the hospital, we send one of theirs at the cemetery. It's gonna escalate, and you're never gonna know how bad it's gonna be.
Well, this is already. I think this is already happening. I think it's going to escalate. I don't think Putin's going to back down. As far as I'm concerned, the only way to stop this is to wipe Putin out. They can't because he protects himself too well.
But there was one of the a very important figure, I guess, that actually how do you say that in English when someone changes side? Desertion. What was that? Um, when you flip side, when you leave the country, like maybe the spies during the Cold War were doing.
Oh yeah. Uh, um,
There is a
exile.
term.
Exile. Is that what we're talking about?
No, it's not. It's not a, like exile. It's just like when you're a traitor, when you betray your own country and you go to work for the enemy.
Oh yes, I know what you mean. I don't know the word for it. No, sorry, I
Oh.
didn't know what you mean.
Okay, but there was a very important figure. I don't remember the name right now, but they say he kind of
Oh,
basically,
the
yeah,
guy in
he,
France.
he left the
The guy in France.
country.
Is he the guy that's in France at the moment? That guy. There's a very important head figure. who's a Russian guy who's in France. Is he Russian or is he Ukrainian? I don't know. He's in France. He's been giving the UK a lot of information. He's been doing a lot of interviews in the UK, and that's really interesting because he's one of the ones turning around and saying. Um,
Uh, as far
Putin
as I
should be
know,
very careful because his own people are going to start turning on him very soon. Apparently, the army are very, very pissed off because they've been sent to this war unprepared, not knowing what they're doing, and they didn't agree to what he's doing anyway. So they've been completely lied to, and it's starting to backfire on him a little bit.
yeah.
I'm
As
curious to
far as
see how
I
it
as
play
far as
out.
I know, it was one of the three guy who had these keys for the nuclear uh, weaponry.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to find out his name because I was reading in a server, but oh, okay, must be.
So, guys, if we could tie this back into the markets, you guys were kind of talking about gold switching over to you know Russia pricing some of their oil and natural gas and I think gold, if I remember right, or what was
Yeah, well, I thought that
Uh,
conversation was getting a bit exhausted because neither of us knew where it was going.
yeah, that was a rumor, and I posted a video about that, but it's not confirmed. It's just speculation.
I mean,
uh,
I've got a different topic I could talk about, but I know no more on that. So if somebody else wants to talk, they can. I know nothing about that, and I don't want to talk about something I know nothing of. I
well, I
did have a
think
question going right back to the very beginning of what we were talking about. That I'd quite like to ask regarding gold versus Bitcoin. If anybody's interested in that topic,
Yeah, I'm down for it.
so I'm really curious. We were in times of in times of uncertainty, we know that traditionally people might possibly take their money out of stocks and put it into gold. Am I correct in thinking that? And what I was wondering was how would this affect Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin essentially, for a serious thing like this, Bitcoin is still not uh, not necessarily 100% proven. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you mean it's not so established as a global edge or a
Yeah, I'm wondering,
refugee? Yeah,
would,
okay.
would would people put their money into gold over Bitcoin? We all love Bitcoin. We think Bitcoin's a sensible place to put it. But would other places turn around and say no, it's still not proved itself enough? Gold is
Well,
happen.
you
Sure,
know,
that make Bitcoin go down? Are we
um,
looking we'll get up to
for
70k and then it'll dump again down to say 40k this time or something?
I don't know
I'm
about
curious.
that, but for me, the short answer would be if you have these kind of a doubt, you could just split your investment. Because
Yeah,
for
but
me, both
institutions do
I
that.
both
think
would be a valid bet.
I think
Oh,
so. Right
you and
now,
I, yes. Institutions do that.
so right now, what we're seeing in the macro scale is the demonstration of censorship resistance, right? And why that's important and why you want that, right? When you have different
Mm.
assets being seized internationally, like major institutions' assets being seized because they do
Yes.
business with Russia. Maybe they're not even Russian, they're
Yeah.
just trading partners with Russia. So you're getting like a live world demonstration of why you need something that's censorship resistant. So I think it's not really likely that after that global demonstration that people would go onto the market and sell all their censorship resistant asset like Bitcoin. It's just not,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
doesn't
I totally agree with
really
that.
apply to the other.
Totally agree with that.
Um,
And even if you don't factor in the war with Russia, you just need to look at Canada, right?
This isn't quite what I was referring to. I agree. I agree completely and understand what you're saying. What I'm referring to more is as economies collapse. I mean, what I'm seeing in the UK, if we tie it to that, is businesses are kind of collapsing because we're look at the travel industry as a great example of that. That's a massive decline because people aren't necessarily going to. I mean, no one's flying to Russia at all at the moment, or Ukraine. There's definitely a decline in the aviation industry.
Yeah.
We've got ferry industry. The travel industry is in the decline, so that's not growing. So, say you're invested in the travel industry, what would be the sensible thing? It would be let's take my money out of those stocks and shares because they're obviously they're uncertain. They might be going down. where would I put it now, knowing that I might have a little bit of Bitcoin, I might have a little bit of gold. Where would be the sensible place to put it? Would I decide to go for Bitcoin? I'm not selling any Bitcoin I've got, but would I see gold there? Because gold's going up at the moment. You know what I mean? And yes,
Um,
Bitcoin just turning a corner, but is Bitcoin proved itself enough? It's been around for 10 years. Gold's been around for
Well, so
4,000.
so Rob, so the same reason that somebody would buy Bitcoin is going to be a similar reason why they would buy gold, right?
Absolutely.
They serve similar purposes.
Store
So
value.
yeah, so
Store value, yes.
so yeah, so I don't see them moving in different directions, really, unless something crazy happens.
See, I do, because in the event of war, you can't bomb a Bitcoin, but you can bomb a whole bunch of gold.
Yeah, you can. You can steal it. Yeah.
You can
Or
steal it, you can move it.
yeah.
You can't do anything with Bitcoin. Once you've got it, it's definitely safe. So it's definitely a very safe asset. Essentially, do
Yeah.
institutions see that yet? Because
Oh,
it
they see
takes them a
that. Yeah.
long time to really, they want to really.
Fidelity just published a whole research paper on that. Um, so yeah,
Oh, do
institutions
they?
see that. Yeah. That's kind of one thing have been trying to harp on recently, and it probably deserves its own video, or
I
it's a
think so.
topic in itself.
I think it's really good.
But
I think it's a really
essentially,
interesting discussion.
you know, uh, Bitcoin is kind of at that inflection point where it's it's no longer being perceived by institutions as a risk asset, right? Sort of
Yeah,
crossing the
exactly.
Rubicon in that sense.
Mm.
Um, and we knew that would happen, right? We're just surprised
Yeah,
that it's happening now. You know?
been accelerated by things like COVID
Yeah,
and war, isn't it?
yeah.
It's amazing how much a disaster accelerates technology.
And of course, you can. I'm a little bit early to make that argument. You could certainly make an argument that that's not happening, but you can also make an argument that it is. And there, companies like Fidelity publishing research papers saying that, talking about Bitcoin is one of the least correlated assets to any other asset, which it is, and that's something I've also talked about. Um, it has the highest Sharpe ratio of any asset, and the only way you can have that high of a Sharpe ratio is if you do have that low correlation, right?
Right.
And so when you so what Sharpe ratio is like the golden ratio for portfolio managers, and Bitcoin has the highest one of any asset. So if you that naturally is going to like start opening people's eyes to it, and they're going to start to
Yeah.
gravitate towards it. So
Well, this is why Michael Saylor's been talking on about Bitcoin for so long as well. It's kind of tied into that, isn't it?
yeah, so what a Sharpe ratio basically means, it's a very complicated mathematical formula, but it basically means that the risk adjusted return is higher than anything else. So
That's the Black Scholes one as well. It's not that complex. It's a differential equation. If you're an engineer, it's a very simple equation.
yeah, I mean,
Or maybe that's just me being a bit
yeah,
autistic. But
yeah,
I understand differential equations. So yeah, I've
so
looked into the Black Scholes one.
but essentially you have like
This one,
you have Bitcoin kind of crossing the Rubicon from you know from a risk on asset to a risk off asset, and under some perception, right? And it's obviously people still perceive it as a risk on asset in some areas, but it's starting to cross that gap and start a new trend, right? That's important to catch on to that. And but essentially, what Fidelity's done, which is really interesting, you can go look at it. They've started allocating Bitcoin to their non-Bitcoin funds. So they have like ETFs that are like oil ETFs, right,
oh,
or
wrong.
equities ETFs. They're starting to
Hmm.
allocate a Bitcoin allocation to those traditional ETFs. And the number I see them using in most of them is 5%. I don't know where,
Did you
what. Sorry, go ahead.
you happen to watch the Willy Woo hasn't posted anything on what Bitcoin did for over a month now. It's a bit of a shame. I was hoping he was going to come out last. I don't know if you watched the last one with the last podcast that he did on what